Sanatan Dharma or the Indian thought process, right? So they believe in the Vedas. And one of the six limbs of the Veda, Shadanga, one of the Anga of the Veda is the Jyotish Shastra. And in the Jyotish Shastra, the 12 houses, everybody knows about, there are zodiac signs and there are 12 houses. Each house represents certain principle. The first house represents ego. Now the Jyotish Shastra doesn't say that the ego, ahankar, here we are not talking about the wrong ahankar. Ahankar is our identity, astitva. It's astitva, it's an identity that is represented by Lord Shiva. So the ego is not divided as male or female. Ego doesn't have gender, because whichever gender you have, you still have a ego, right? And in this way, the second house, communication, speech, right? You come to education. Then the 10th house. Why I'm speaking this, to understand the foundational principle of the Vedas. The 10th house discusses your karma, your action, karma sthana. उसको कर्म स्थान बोला गया है. So the astrological chart does not make any distinction between man and woman in regards to karma and their identity. Only thing what makes the difference between male and female chart is the 7th house, which is the house of marriage, where for a woman the Jupiter is considered as her spouse. For a
Not able to hear you, Prabhuji.
are you able to hear?
Yes, now we can hear, Prabhuji.
Hello, you are able to hear now?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear you now. We lost you for a minute, for just less than a minute, Prabhuji.
Okay, I was mentioning that the foundational principle of the Vedas, the Jyotish Shastra, does not make any distinction in regards to work. Only place which it distinguishes is choosing your spouse. The 7th house is the only place where it makes a distinction. If you are a woman, then your husband, the representation of your husband is Jupiter. And if you are a man, the representation of your wife is your Venus. That is the only place there is a distinction between man and woman in regards to their husband or wife. Rest everything, absolutely, there is no difference. This is the foundational principle. That means even a woman needs to work and even a man needs to work. It is not based upon liking or not liking. The work will be there. What kind of work will be decided in two folds, right? For example, the Mars is the planet of action, desire. Imagine there is a man and his Mars is extremely low and weak, and his wife's Mars is very powerful, sitting in the 10th house only. And if somebody tells, because you're a woman and therefore do not show your desire and action, it is basically killing the very foundation of knowledge. Now let us understand whether this Jyotish Shastra was ever implemented in real life, because we hear that up until 100 years ago, till the dawn of the Western civilization, the West came to save us, the West gave us the opportunity to get into work. All these myths are there. Now, Chanakya Pandit, 2000 years ago, 2500 years ago, he wrote Arthashastra. In Arthashastra, not as an emergency, he does define different profession for women. Right. Very clear. You can read verses after verses, verses after verses, verses after verses. Then if you go back to the original Puranas and Itihasas, right, the rishis, the great sages, they were able to conceive the most important profession for the maintenance of this creation. Maintenance of resources, maintenance of wisdom, and maintenance of energy. No other literature, the Abrahamic faith, the Western pagan religion also, they did not conceive the way the rishis conceived. The Lakshmi is the representation of resources. Saraswati is the source of wisdom, and Parvati is the source of Shakti energy. If somebody conceived like this in the foundational writing of their knowledge bank, how in the world we could ever think that women should not work? That does not stand a logic, right? Either you see from the Puranas perspective, either you see from the astronomy, astrological perspective, or if you see from the Arthasastra's perspective. Now that is the foundation we have established. The next principle, the question is asked, what kind of profession a woman can do? Again, we'll have to go back, what kind of psychology she has. Some women may have great male energy in their psychology, uh, masculine energy, and therefore, while giving career advice to them, one has to see what kind of profession they can do based upon their psychology. Now, the question is raised, okay, if there is too much of male energy in a female chart, or she's showing psychologically, but still she's a woman, that question will be raised. अंत में तो एक स्त्री है ना वो, क्या वो जाकर युद्ध भूमि पर, is it possible for her to go in the front line, stay in the grounds while fighting the separatists from the Kashmir, right? When they are fighting the separatists, the soldiers, when they have to look for this terrorist, for 2 to 3 days, they are just lying like a Avadut Brahmana in the Bhagavatam, doing everything. Basically, you can imagine eating, sleeping, not sleeping, little bit sleeping, they take a turn. They have to basically respond to the call of nature. They sometimes just have to do in their pants without getting up. So therefore, the Shastras, while making it very clear, they also bring this concept of there is a psychological reality and there is an anatomy reality. When we are talking about gender, we do not only focus on they being female or male, or we do not focus only about the psychological reality. Oh, psychologically, I'm more suited for male kind of work. Oh, psychology, I'm more suited a female kind of work. So let us focus on psychology. What else do we have to see? No, there is this anatomy also. So therefore, the Shastras, when they are seeing, they harmonize between your anatomy, your your physiological in an external body, and your psychological. When they combine together, that gives rise to real understanding of what a woman can do in her profession, right? The problem with the modern world, you know, when they talk about the past, they have an isolated understanding of the past. They very clearly come from that background. Oh, women were all abused. Some of these celebrities, when they tell their stories, in fact, they have no stories to tell to empower people. They can agitate people, they can provoke people, right? They are an isolated story where they're talking about how my father allowed my brother to go anywhere and everywhere, and we were not allowed, right? So if you're coming from that background, and therefore I did like this, what they miss on something is the principle of care. Naturally, when the care became more like a monitoring, you know, a girl will always feel, why such discrimination between me and my brother? It is not about, I'm not saying the discrimination was not exhibited by people, but the foundation principle is not discrimination. The foundational principle is sensitivity in regards to enhancing their protection along with their professional growth. And therefore, our Chanakya Pandit in Arthashastra, what he does, he creates a special space for women to work in such a way that their anatomy and their psychology is beautifully balanced. And therefore, one of the core principles of Bhagavad Gita is the principle of kshetra. What kind of field you have, right? A man has certain field and woman has certain field. Women needs to know what is her field, and men need to know what is their field. Again, the Panchakosha concept, Anna, Prana, Mano, Vijnana, Anandamaya Kosha. So rather than discussing specific profession, can woman be a doctor? Can woman be a chartered accountant? Can woman be a, an astrologer? Can a woman be a speaker? Can a woman be a guru? Right? All these questions are extremely isolated. They are not integrated. Rather than asking about a particular person, you go back to the foundation of that logic, and based upon that foundation, you provide the facility, resources, empowerment to the deserving or desiring women. Usko connect karna hai. So therefore, when somebody is more resourceful, somebody is more responsible, somebody is more creative, it is but natural that the responsibility becomes more on their shoulder. When the responsibility becomes more on their shoulder, it is not that people have to force upon them that responsibility. They will take that responsibility. Shakti ka pradarshan karti hai. She is the representation of Shakti. Handling burden is an core psychology of a woman. Right? So rather than making that as a rule by the men, oh, because you're a wife, therefore you have to do. That's a violent statement. Oh, because you are a girl, therefore you should do. That's a violent statement. Oh, because you're a daughter, therefore you should do. That's a violent statement. Oh, because it is spoken in the religious scripture, right? If a religious scripture, whichever scripture it is, the scriptures of the Sanatan Dharma, I challenge anybody, no, not sentimentally, not emotionally, logically, psychologically, from Ayurvedic perspective, we can challenge anybody to show that there is no greater woman empowerment presented in the Shastras than any other woke liberal feminist could ever imagine. Because their ideology is very isolated, their understanding is very superficial, their concepts are simply stupid activism without concrete plan for how to empower. Right? What happened unfortunately is some people on the path of dharma religion, they took certain concept based upon their belief system, rather than giving a foundational integrated concept about women. you know when the women protection came, they considered women protection is synonymous to making them not work professionally. And again, the other logic, oh, it's a modern world, women need to work. Our world's principle does not change whether it is modern or shastric world. The world always remains the same, other than application changes little bit. Nowadays, women may travel from plane to plane, car to car, place to place, doing their different kinds of job. This kind of job even men did not do previously, so there is no question of discrimination. The chartered accountants were not there 100 years ago, and therefore the men as a chartered accountant did not exist. The allopathic doctor were not existing 100 years ago, 125 years ago. Therefore, men also were not existing like that. And the healer, whether men or women, according to their disposition, they were existed in the both the parties. But what was the difference? The difference was by very nature, generally. Again, we should not give an isolated story, but there is a Mary Kom who is a boxer, or there is this lady, she did not marry, but she is doing so good also. We should never give an isolated story where the general principle is always dynamically existing. That does not prove the point. Rather, that disproves the point when you are giving an isolated example. Statistic is important. Therefore, what the scripture decided, wholesomeness, they decided that whatever you are, whoever you are, first understand who you are. From a psychological perspective, from the anatomical perspective, from the time perspective, from the resources perspective, based upon, they gave a facility for people to perform their duties, right? So that their duty did not disturb their relationship side. Imagine a role of a mother. Imagine a role of a wife. Imagine a role of a sister. Imagine a role of a teacher, because a mother is the first teacher. If they cease to exist in the name of professional growth, when you give birth to a baby, you may decide, okay, I don't want to give a birth to baby, I'll have a surrogate mother, I'll become a surrogate mother. There is a huge difference in the psychology of that child. And the psychology matters so much more. And therefore, the followers of Sanatan Dharma, realizing there is a greater responsibility for women. It is not that they design, okay, this is how. It is a natural reality. Any responsible person will take more and more on their own shoulder. They do not have the time for activism because they are actually performing an activity. They can cook, they can work, they can care for their family, right? And if the men folk, or so-called extremely traditionalist sees this as distraction, sees this as useless, sees this that she is a egomaniac, right? That is violence. At the same time, seeing this, the modern feminist will respond, "Arey, forget all these things. Just get lost." And always tell the story of isolation, how women were mistreated. And therefore, we chose to become independent women. Independent at what cost? Independent at the cost of not harmonizing. Right? So, therefore, our artha, our dharma, our kama, our journey for moksha also has to be integrated in the journey of woman. If all this is seen very clearly, then she can become anything desirable psychologically and anatomically. Let us take blunt example now. Okay, for simple example, can woman be a soldier? Or soldier ban sakti hai kya? I can read you, verses from the Vedas. There is a verse in the Vedas, foundational verses in the Vedas, where the Vachaka, the reciter of the Veda, is invoking the blessings of the Parabrahman, saying that let let the people in my country, the Kshatriyas, the protector, the Vaishyas, the producer, the Shudras are causing so much of contribution in the form of art, music, dance, and labor. The Brahmanas, let them contribute in the form of the knowledge. And all our cows give abundant milk. Let our bull work nicely. And every woman in that village may have the power to protect other, clearly indicating the concept of taking weapons in their hands. सुरक्षा देने के लिए तैयार होना चाहिए, ये वेदों में लिखा गया है. Right? So how can I not present the Vedas? There is this another verse from Manu Samhita which explains very clearly that at all situation we should take those kind of work which makes us free, independent, rather than dependent upon others. So Manu says, जो भी कार्य है, जितना आपको दूसरे के ऊपर निर्भर करना पड़ता है, as much as you have to depend on others, that much you are not happy. As much as you are responsibly independent, that much you become very happy. Therefore, they can choose any work as long as their anatomical, psychological, reality is fulfilled. For example, I'm giving the example of a soldier. Right? Can she be a frontline fighter? It is absolutely not a problem. Anybody can be frontline fighter, but it is not based upon my intention. It is not based upon modernity. It is based upon your physiology, your anatomy. If you do not fit into that system, whether you're a wrestler or a judo fighter or you're a karate fighter, if you don't fit into that anatomy, physiology, psychology, they will take you out. And it's therefore but natural this kind of work, the male people with the male energy have a greater chances to break those limitation and do something tangible. Right? So therefore the point is, can they go? Yes. So therefore the wise sages, rather than everybody exploring and trying, they made a system. What was the system? Because you have a female body also, along with your psychological reality, these could be the places where you would not want to go. But somebody outstanding, hatke, exceptionally different, not that she's exceptional woman, she's exceptionally different from other women, she may be on the front line. The Ahalyabai Holkar, In the Mahabharat, there is a Khila Parva called as Jaimini Baharat. In that Jaimini Baharat, there is a army. Chandra Prabha was the leader of army which actually confronted Arjun. And they were so powerful, they had consumed so many kings. So Arjun, when he fought with her, the voice from the heaven told Arjun, forget fighting her now. Right? The heaven voice spoke and stopped him from fighting. The point is, oh, how can we know whether the story truth or not? Let us not talk about that, but at least understand that our rishis at least conceived such stories and they implemented such stories. There are hundreds of stories about the king allowing their wives and sisters to manage many villages. They were like a mini Sardar or Rajas doing many things for people, and they were women, right? So, therefore, it is not activism. Oh, we can do everything what men can do. Why are you comparing with them? Compare with your own self. Understand what is your self. If your self is of a boxer, you can fight. If that self is a self of an artist, do that. Don't have to change. Why should I be an artist? I want to be a boxer. Then you are not proper male or female. Basically, it is a confused entity. And the confused entity always create confusion through their activism, which is not at all beneficial. One irreasonable act, unreasonable act made by some traditionalists cannot be translated into reactive behavior. Not required, right? So therefore, Lakshmi Devi in the Mahabharata, when she discusses with Rukmini in regards to resources, how women can collect resources, the house front resources, she explains very beautifully. I'm sitting in a village and I was asking one of the village teacher that what happens, because as I said, I'm planning for this few sessions on sanskaras and collecting information from different parts of India, different communities about how they would give namakaran, the name giving ceremony. And what that villager said was very fascinating. The villager said, you know what, when our child is born, boy or girl, they are in the house of their mother. The girl feels more connected, even though she is married and staying. The freedom, the festivity, what she can ask from the mother, she will not be able to ask from her mother in law. And she should not ask also because you have not developed that closer relationship. You just can't come in and say, mother in law, mujhe ye chahiye, mother in law, wo chahiye. That shows that there is a lack of, it's not confidence, that is lack of maturity, right? So therefore the sages conceived, you go, you feel great comfort, so that is beneficial for your baby. Slowly the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, because they still have many children, you can do it in your husband's house, right? So during the namakarana ceremony, the husband has already seen the baby. But when the namakarana happens, they do in their folk tradition, right? There are spiritual elements also, but they may not invite the Purohit to do all that. So they come. And who is there? The girl's family organizes everything. The husband's sisters may be invited. In South Indian Sri Vaishnava family, the girl's brother is invited to give a namakaran. But this entire village festival is only dominated by women, and there are no men, including the father, for name giving ceremony. It is the only women come together and decide the name according to the birth chart. or sometimes they choose two, three more names. A name according to chart is kept secret, and a non-chart name is made public so that the child will not be misused for black magic. Only women are doing it. And this man who told me story, his daughter was just born. I said, yes, Prabhuji, I was not allowed to go for that. Because this tradition is going on since ages, right? So therefore, there was no such thing as, okay, why they are doing, why are we are not allowed, why they are doing, why we are not allowed here. That shows the brain of a ordinary people, having unnecessary fame, right? Like how the Bollywood, Hollywood, or any Tollywood or any wood, eventually what do? They have a wrong information, and they spread this wrong information as a knowledge, as a truth. And our people fall for it because it comes so cheaply, right? But if you see their own life, it is so isolated. All that so-called, you know, the powerful glitter life is full of emptiness. And even if it is not emptiness, it is again isolated reality. It is not an integrated reality. It will fall apart. It will break apart. Therefore, the simple principle in the Vedas, in the Puranas, in the Itihasas, it is not about what I want to do. It is about what is your surroundings, your kshetra, what is your psychology, what is your anatomy, what is your family surrounding. All that when put together, then your profession will be chosen. Huh? And why would they do it? To make a money? In those times, 70-75% of the people were depending upon agriculture. So there was no trouble for collecting grains. In Vijayanagar kingdom, if you read somewhere, the at the peak of their prosperity, like somebody who's like not lowest of the low worker, but somewhat higher laborer would make about 30 rupees per month from what the if you consider the present salary. In those times they would make 30 rupees per month, and the yearly expense would be 9 rupees. If your yearly expense is 9 rupee and your monthly earning is 30 rupees, why in the hell you would go to the marketplace? For the sake of earning money, they would not go. The earning was just part of it, and prosperous earning. It was not an emergency. अरे उसको जाना पड़ेगा, उसको काम करना पड़ेगा. So therefore, whenever we study the history of women working or not working, should not be seen from 50, 60, 70, 80, 200 years. Because of the influence of Christianity and Islam, where there is a Puritan philosophy, very black and white philosophy. The modern Western civilization takes its inspiration from Protestant value, the Protestant Christian, and some of the big sins in Christianity, based upon Bible. They said women do not have soul. One so-called saintly person said it was a mistake that God created a woman. Whether he spoke in jest or he was damn serious, it does not matter, because that is absolutely not only not truth, it's insulting. And here the foundational principle of the Vedas, that Shakti and Shaktiman are integrated. The feminine and masculine energy is integrated. And because integrated, therefore men and women had a clear understanding that this is my psychology, but this is my anatomy. The women knew this is my psychology, but this is my anatomy. Right? Like other day, somebody asked why The male cricketers are given so much of importance. Market, right? Those who are making that question, I asked them, do you know who is the ladies cricket captain of India? I said, tell the 11 names of all the players, lady players. You'll not be able to speak because you yourself do not give them the importance when they're actually performing, because you don't take them seriously. Because compared to men market, your market is very less. So why somebody will give a charity? Oh, because Virat Kohli is getting this much. Even this lady also has to get so much of it. Whoever is Kaur, yeah, Mandana, or Gaikwad, whatever, whoever they are, right? They will not get. ये simple reality है. जब आप market, when you come to the market, if the government says, okay, you have to take 15% women in your job, they will take. But if there is a feminist, he said, you have to give me also the same salary you are giving it to this person, $140,000. बोले देखो, free market. There are 50 women waiting to find a job from me, qualified, talented, having a great disposition, and they're willing to work from 80 to 100. Why should I give 140? It's a market. It is not a socialism here, right? Even the government has made the rule 18%, 10%, 12% women have to be there. But there are other women are willing to work for lesser salary, better contribution than this oak and this feminist. Why would company basically entertain stupid people who are activists? Huh? Therefore, whether we are in the foundational principle or we are in the practical principle, or we are anatomical principle or psychological reality, the society was naturally accepted certain pattern, and that pattern kept the society at great stability. But now, unfortunately, because of some people, basically the industry with the journalism and the the industry of Virat Kohli played 100 tests. There were many people that played 100 tests, right? They did not make an issue of bringing their wife because she is also celebrity, right? So when you do something artificially, that is not going to help a large number of women who are willing to be empowered, who are willing to be free thinkers, not reckless thinkers. So rather than free thinkers, they are made into reckless people. Rather than making them creative, you are making them anarchist, right? Therefore, when we go back to the scriptural logic, the scripture has wisdom, the scripture has logic, the scripture has practicality, right? And therefore, whether it is Satyabhama driving the chariot for Krishna, whether it is Kaikai driving chariot for our Dasharath Maharaj, right? Or Kunti giving such a beautiful discourse to our Yudhishthira Maharaj through Krishna, or Mother Sita speaking to Lord Ram about her going to the forest, or speaking about Kshatriyatva in the forest, that shows this women had given knowledge on equal footing with their fellow male. But even if they were not given, they knew the logic behind this, rather than complaining, oh, we were not taught. Whenever people say, you know what, my father allowed me, my brother to go. Come on. Our wish fulfilling, our wish that the world should be so safe that women can walk in the 12 of the night. What, even in that safe place, if there is one unscrupulous person, he or she takes advantage of your vulnerability. It's a heavy cost. Therefore, more than making the world completely safe by the wishes of liberal people, the world functions based upon the statistical reality of the past, and creates the system in such a way their psychological growth, their anatomical growth, and their societal growth are integrated so that they can continue to be a lambe race ka ghoda. Let that be a horse, but let it run as long as possible rather than running short and falling apart. So therefore, for us, again, one of the greatest in Sanatan Dharma, we do not celebrate a day on women's reality, a day on father's reality. We have a system which are called as samskaras, a 16 samskaras. We have nothing to do with this. And one of the reason, the number 8 in astrology, numerologically, it's a struggle. ये स्ट्रगल करने का दिवस है. 8 तारीख स्ट्रगल के साथ संबंधित है, संघर्ष के साथ संबंधित है. But women here, however psychologically are they made differently, there is this strong element of very strong feminine energy of refinedness, creativity, faith, artistic sense, fine speech, right? So therefore, Manu, in his Manu Samhita, he talks about, their psychological toughness, if you're born psychologically toughness, will not separate them or their anatomical reality also. ये दोनों को देखकर जब उनके लिए कुछ प्रोफेशन दिया जाता है, not that the society decides what profession she should do, rather society facilitates her background and provides a safe environment so that in her kshetra she grows to such an extent that there is fulfillment rather than comparison. What we are looking in life is not comparison, because comparison will never give us satisfaction. But when you full fulfillment as a woman, as a man, as a teacher, as a farmer, I was able to do according to my capacity. My integration was almost complete. When we have this conviction, that very conviction and when the very experience itself is a step for liberation forever. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Nice to know that our history has been encouraging and empowering womanhood. Prabhuji, today women are well educated, they are career oriented, they like to earn money because money is a source of power, a source of security. And in the process, when both husband and wife are working, sometimes children get neglected. So, what are your thoughts about it?
Again, the whole thing is we discussed about. I gave the example of Vijayanagar kingdom. Right, the money was not an issue, and therefore work was art. Right, now work has become an anxiety. Before getting the work, getting into college, getting into a school, we can imagine so many students went out of India to become a doctor. Right, a country like Ukraine also, thousands of students. Why? If I become doctor, I'll make more money. Parents are sending, right, trying to send them there, and then the government of India, right, brought them back. But did you see one thing? There were people who were consciously grateful, but there were people consciously grumbling also. And we have to be aware of such grumbling species which are becoming large in number. Victimhood, right? That's a foundational principle. Again, Lakshmi and Rukmini's discussion is there in the Mahabharata about earning resources, collecting resources, right? Again, if you see the Upanan Samskar, when you go to Upanan Samskar, the first thing where you go to beg from a woman. Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi is an eternal mantra vibrated in the land of Bharat in every house. The student, not necessarily only a Brahmana student. Krishna also went to beg along with Sudama. He had Sandhya Vandan because Sandhya Vandan was given to everybody. And what would they beg from? And they were not living in the forest. Sometimes people have this idea, oh, Gurukul means in the forest. No. If you have to go and beg, will you go to a tiger or will you go to a deer? You'll go to a householders only. And whom are you going to? You're going to a woman. Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi. Oh, Mata se Bhiksha mangta tha. Why? Because she would control, not control, should manage the resources. One of the nature of a feminine energy is Stri. The word Stri means to expand. What she would expand? She would expand the identity of family togetherness. Oh, this is my husband. Oh, they are my children. Oh, this is my uncle. Oh, this is my aunt. For a social society, that consciousness is very important. Sometimes we misconstrue the word Stri. We think that Stri only means bondage. Every character, every relationship has the potential bondage and potential strength. We cannot make it black and white. So here, because a woman is more sensitive about future and relationship, therefore the economical prosperity and economical management, the earth management was done much easier by women. And therefore one of the great economist, Guru Murtiji, when he had given yes, here Ganesh just placed this chat. I was about to mention this on Dharma Wiki. There was a talk given by two lady scholars. It's a brilliant research they did. I would recommend them. I will recommend the listeners to go back and listen. It's a foundational knowledge they've given. You share with others also. Ganesh just posted. You can see that along with the is given it to everybody. So therefore, earning money has become an emergency now. If you ask me, should women work? Should they go out and work? I would say women becoming self-sufficient is very important. And part of that self-sufficiency is financial management. They should have well to manage because that is what Indian system was. The women would manage. And if they do not have well to manage, that gives rise to great anxiety in the family. If you want to reduce anxiety, of course, unfortunately nowadays, can you imagine for somebody acting as a prostitute earns 20 crore rupees and somebody is actually being a scientist, earning so less. And what kind of example they set? They may be great actors presenting great entertainment, but our society invests on the wrong kind of people. Therefore, whenever I talk about why you talk about money that they are earning, but because money is important, therefore I'm speaking about Lakshmi नारायण के साथ में, नारायण लक्ष्मी के साथ में होना चाहिए. Right? If a responsible woman, like a scientist who knows, those who are working in ISRO in India, most of them they're traditional women, at the same time fiercely intellectual. So the money, wealth is given to them, they will use that wealth for the better reason. Rather than partying every third day, going to this island, going to that island, right? And then making others feel like that. तो गलत लोगों के पास धन जाएगा तो गलत कारण के लिए जाएगा, right? Therefore money is extremely important. and money being with women is extremely important. इसीलिए हमारे समाज ने स्त्री धन दिया था, and that स्त्री धन would remove all the anxiety of women. कि बाबा मेरे पास है, कुछ हो गया तो I don't have to worry about it. Rather, they would sponsor their husband's next career also. अरे क्या wisdom है! The greatest tragedy of Hindu people, the followers of Sanatan Dharma, that we are creating bunch of idiots in the form of male or female. Today on Women's Day, the male trying to empower women, they're dressing like girls because we do not believe in gender discrimination. Or you will become a ghost because anatomy is one of the reality of life. And those who say women should not work, oh my dear friend, psychology is another reality of human existence. You cannot deny the psychology for the sake of anatomy, and you cannot reject the anatomy for the sake of psychology. They are integrated, right? So therefore, money is extremely important. No, we cannot allow that, oh, they should not get the money because the whole society gave them, and therefore there is greater stability. As simple as that.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Can I request Aarti ji to please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you for the session, Prabhuji. Thanks a lot. We didn't know about all this, that all this is there in our Shastra. Prabhuji, my question was where to start from when everything is like haywire? Nowadays it is, nothing is in its place. So, say financials or we don't know our anatomy and physiology. So, how to know our psychophysical nature and
yeah, we are working on that courses also. We are working on these courses where people can understand this, and simple, even if you don't, the simple principle, go back to the fundas, original fundas. However heavy it is, again, the Vedic description, again, why we have to go back to the Vedic foundation? The Vedic foundation always believe in the foundational principle, and therefore in the Vedas, sometimes people say it's a Kali Yuga, this is how it will be. This is one of the most tragic answer. It's a tamogun answer, because from the Vedas perspective, dharma and adharma is an eternal battle. Whether it is Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga, in Satya Yuga also it was lot of recklessness was happening when Hiranyaksha was there, and they were ruling for thousands of years. Right. In the Kali Yuga, recklessness and stability, their lifespan is very short. So therefore, in one sense, we can say, oh, very good, the bad things will also go away. Right? And we have seen it. We have seen it. If there is little honesty, sincerity, and hard working, right? I should never but see in Uttar Pradesh, the kind of this sadhu, yogi, even though I don't agree that a sannyasi should be in the helm of the affairs, but sometimes there are emergencies. That yogi has worked 18 hours, 19 hours. At least people should respect the hard work, doing whatever he could do. And you see the difference, right? You see the difference. So it is all begins with you as a person rather than the society. I think I quoted Sai Deepak, one of the great lawyer. He mentioned this. Let us not worry about changing the society, because the society is nothing but one individual. A forest is made of trees, and trees are made of a tree. A garden, mango tree, you go to each tree, because every tree is valuable, and because of the earth tree, there is a collection of tree. So therefore, beginning with myself, going to the foundational principle, and applying accordingly. And the Vedas are absolutely very foundational because they're dealing with eternal principle. They are not dealing based upon what stupid Deepika Padukone said, what Alia Bhatt said, what Priyanka Chopra said, what Virat Kohli said. No, or some so-called radical sadhu said. They do not decide the course of discussion. They are nobody to us. For us, again, we go back to Lakshmi Devi. I've written a book on money and Mahabharat, right? And then if you also see, as I said, the talk given by this to Nishala and Madam Nishala and Kanakavalli, they have given beautiful presentation. So going back to the foundation helps us a lot in regards to changing our own course of action. And if you change, 10 will change. I was recently in Bangalore and I met one interesting person, and he said, I come from a family of Vedas, Veda Pandit, but I became an engineer, went to America, worked in some of the big bank, came back to India, still working. But along with that, I am studying the Veda, and I see there is so much of interest amongst the young people now. So nothing in this world is completely dark, but unfortunately, we focus more on that side. If we focus on the foundational principle, we will certainly grow into doing what we are supposed to do.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. We have a question by Devi Rasika Mataji. Can you please ask your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Actually, you already answered, Prabhuji. Let us not worry about changing the society. So my question is something related to the same thing, Prabhuji. So it's many women are oppressed in society, are not encouraged to do what they want to do. And another side, activists, left and right, provocating, especially in Western world. What's our role and how to contribute? That's my question, Prabhuji. So, Prabhuji, you said they are impacting. Alia Bhatt or whatever, like you mentioned, couple of people, they're speaking what they want to speak, but they're impacting in a larger way, Prabhuji. So
that is again I'm saying, whom are they impacting? Whom are they impacting? Are they impacting you? Let us therefore, we have to create a discourse and making our real heroines, our nayikas. When we present our nayikas, whether it is Lakshmi, Saraswati, Parvati, Jhansi Rani, Laxmibai, whether it is Ahilyabai Holkar, all these people, when we give a narratives properly, again, this Vikram Sampath, Sai Deepak and others, 10 years back, many things people would not know. Now, there is a huge awareness amongst the people also. Therefore, the dharmic force should not be acting tamoguna. Oh my God, this is happening. Oh my God, that is happening. We will not work on the principle of anxiety. We will work on the principle of battle. It's a constant battle. And therefore, Krishna says, a warrior, when the war of intellectualism, the war of protecting the land, he becomes extremely happy to be a battling. And warrior is not only a Kshatriya, there is a Brahmana warrior, there is a Shudra warrior, there is a Vaishya warrior, there is a warrior among the teacher classes also. Sab jagah mein warrior hai. So therefore, when we see there are people who are oppressing the women, empower them. And there are people who are talking all nonsense, reject them consciously, systematically. Ek ek karenge. Why you think? We saw some of the Bollywood movie, 1983, people said, Prabhuji, you should see that. And I said, why should I see it? Right? They lost the money. Why you think they lost the money? Because the people became conscious. No, these are woke. They have no, responsibility in regards to, they may be nice people, but niceness does not define contribution. I would prefer some people being harsh, but they're consciously contributing in the growth of the society, as against people are sweet talkers. Oh, you're very sweet, you're nice, they are nobody to us because they do not contribute anything. So people are becoming aware of these things. So therefore, I learned from one great scholar. He said, never be panicky because dharma is eternal. When you become panicky, you lose your own dharma rather than dharma losing itself. Like a player, a cricketer, if he's panicky about the team losing the match and he gets out, he loses the position in the team. The team continues without you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Can I ask Satya ji to please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you. I joined a little bit later, but I heard last question about. If I understood properly, you were talking about.
Satya ji, not able to hear you very well.
You don't hear me very well.
No, I can. You can speak. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if I understood properly, you were saying that it's okay for women in the Krishna consciousness or in the society to also earn living, to work. Is that right? Is it, or my understanding right? Because yeah, we have at the moment situation in the family. So I just wanted to make it clear. Is it the right way I understood? Please,
Yeah,
if you can.
if you have heard my lecture, I begin by saying psychological reality and anatomical reality made our sages to give work for everybody.
Okay, yeah.
And based upon that work, based upon who we are, the work was designed in such a way that the female men felt protection rather than imprisoned. And we
Okay.
discussed about wealth, that in the previous time the wealth was always given to women to take care, because when they would see the wealth they would not squander it, because the nature of women is to see larger family. By nature they would share with their larger family. Therefore the word stri means to expand. Expand means what? And that's not only always wrong. Expand means to extend the integrated relationship. Nowadays, because the wealth is not in their hand, it is but natural they will be disturbed. So some or other they have to be self-sufficient also. If the society does not give them, they have to be self-sufficient. But if they become self-sufficient responsibly, then they will not be like these movie actresses, but they will be like very responsible women. There are hundreds of responsible women in a bigger position, but doing everything. Their scripture, their family, their reading, their writing, everything. So let us take their example of people who are making money rather than the wrong people who make money and become stupid or become crazy. That does not make us, oh no, therefore women should not earn. No, the foundational principle is the wealth should always be in the hand of a woman.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a simple principle.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I request Nitya Brajlila Mataji to please ask a question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for arranging this session. And my Vaishnav Pranam to Prabhuji yourself as well as the other Prabhu. My question is, in workplace, we work creatively, we work hard, but it is a reality that we face a lot of enviousness from our peers. Being in spiritual platform, though gradually I myself, we do not feel envious, rather I appreciate internally what the others are doing. But of late, what I have been facing, that people become very critical actually when I do some work and the management level starts actually recognizing the work. So there is a tendency that some people try to take the credit even if they copy the data also. This is one thing, and the second thing is that sometimes the management, they themselves also try to take the hard work that is being put by myself or some people like us also, and they give the credit to some of the people who they have with whom the people who are actually in alignment with the management line, because there are certain corruptions in the management line. Sometimes it is obvious to us, but we do not align with themselves. So how to deal with this situation, Prabhuji, if you can guide? And it hurts actually professionally. There are situations where I'm being forced to actually to speak up some of the corruptive practices, and as a result they release actually because they don't like to hear those things. But I know if I don't speak out, I might be put in a spot later on.
Yes,
Actually, formal way we highlighted that this is the corruptive practices you are doing, and I am not in alignment with all of you.
therefore the first principle, unfortunately, the modern work, we have to understand that we can put our brain but not our heart, because many of these professional companies, I'm not saying all, many of these professional companies, like why the war is happening, for whatever other matters, whether Putin is aggressive, the war is happening. One of the foundational reason for the war is to sell the weapons. That's a foundational principle. So there are companies which are, their goal is to make money at any cost, right? So therefore, when you see like that, but what, for whatever reason, your kind of talent is connected to the companies which are not in sync with your value system, so why should I put my heart there? It is not your house, it is not your temple, it is not your community. So from very beginning we should be very clear that technologically concentration is required. There is a difference between putting our concentration and putting our heart. Heart is connected to emotions, and concentration does not need emotions, because it is not art, it is not music, it is not drama, it's a profession. Less heart and more concentration, get your work done. That is the first thing. And when you see, it is but natural envy, small mindedness, taking credit from others, then you have to stand for yourself in such a way that you don't become Abhimanyu, but you become Arjun. So to become an Arjun, we have to also have a right strategy. When to open our mouth, when not to open our mouth, because you are in that world, in the world of politics. So it is important that we know diplomacy, because sometimes when you are too honest without having a strategy, that become backfire. And therefore, what is Rajarshi means? Rajarshi means Raja externally, Rishi internally. No, that's very important. Jitna, therefore, Chanakya Pandit Prabhupada also quoted, you don't see the straight trees standing in the forest. They're cut by the woodcutters because they're easy to cut. But the crooked trees going here and there, they may not be crooked in giving the fruits. They may not be crooked in giving fragrance, but they have formed their shape in such a way it is not very easy to cut them. And this is what we learn from Krishna. There are two Krishnas. Krishna is one Krishna for our heart, the flute playing Krishna. And there is another Krishna who is playing conch, who is for our life. हमारे अध्यात्म के लिए ब्रज कृष्ण की आवश्यकता है, और समाज के लिए महाभारत कृष्ण की आवश्यकता है. You have to harmonize these two, then there is a greater chances that you will be less affected and more. It is not only dealing spiritually. I'll try to be simply dealing it spiritually. No, that is not possible. You cannot deal only spiritually. You have to deal practically also. And you also have to have that spiritual foundation also, because you want to grow. Why not? As much as good people grow, as I said, that adds. If a good person If a spiritualist becomes a CEO of a company, then he can actually think, oh, I need to use this fund for better causes also. And an evil person having a great skill becomes the CEO. He says, okay, let us have bigger parties. Therefore, the good people have to fight to grow. Today only, when I was sitting, the farmer, when I was playing a tape and listening to a lecture of a local sadhu, and he said a brahmana should be satisfied, but king should never be satisfied. Why? A brahmana means individual spiritual development. A raja means societal development. And he cannot say sufficient for my kingdom. No, as much as he can collect the resources, minimizing destruction of other country, maximize your own resources, he should never be satisfied. So we have to be king externally and sage internally, so that our external and internal grows very nicely.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, can we take one more
Yeah, we can
question?
take one or two questions. Yeah.
Okay, Prabhuji, there is a question from Kalpesh Prabhuji. It's a little sensitive question. He mentions that Srila Prabhupada in his purports in the Bhagavad Gita mentions that women are less intelligent compared to men. This tends to create some confusion. Can you please clarify?
Why should one be stuck to one thing what he has said compared to millions of other things he has shown empowering? You know? So what happens sometimes, there is a concept of, there is a nyaya. There is a nyaya. In that nyaya, where you have to see the overall context. You see overall context, and somebody comes. This is how I say. There are other things which he has said. You also have to see. And if somebody says, no, but how can he say like this? I would say, if you don't want to agree, it's okay. Don't agree, but don't disagree with his entire contribution. The problem with people is that, oh, if I disagree means I am disagreeing about his whole existence. No. If you want to not to agree, you have right to not to agree. It's okay. But don't disagree with all other things you have contributed. Don't it's not about accept everything or reject everything. Doesn't work like that. There are many things in the Shastras also where you may say, I don't agree. Doesn't mean that if you don't agree something, you reject everything and walk away to the adharma path. That is not required. And then again, there are different contexts. I would not want to discuss here about that. No, so therefore it is not we have to understand the psychology that we should not reject something which I don't agree, or blindly say, okay, I have to accept it now, what can I do? You're struggling. No need to struggle there. There are many things to see where you can see great empowerment.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, one last question from Sunita ji. She would like to know that how can she build her feminine energy for her growth?
Yeah, that's depending upon what role you are playing. Sometimes the physical position also helps one to develop the feminine nature, what to speak of a women, for men also. you know so therefore that certain role one has to take, one role position. Like, if you are into too much of professional world, in back in the house you are not able to do that feminine work. Consciously choose, at least once in a while I'll cook for your family. Or if you're already doing that and you still feel that, oh, I'm not doing my feminine nature, find out what art, music, dance, singing, you know oh, Lakshmi in the Mahabharat, one of the fantastic way of developing that psychological nature of feminine is is it's so interesting that decorating oneself nicely, with ornaments, with colorfulness. And therefore, even in the land of Rajasthan, especially in the desert area. It's very interesting where land sounds very dry. They would have colorful turbans, thick ornaments, whether kada, whether their foot ornament. Why like this? Because uh, therefore, why? Because they wanted to feel that, oh, I need to be refined in my nature also. Therefore, Ayurveda again, the best way to develop anything is through our Annamaya Kosh. And what is Annamaya Kosh? It's a physical. We don't have to be always seeing only philosophically. Philosophy is the foundation, no doubt, but going beyond philosophy also. Like when you are with children, your feminine energy develops. When you see something nice, beautiful drama, your feminine energy develops. There is more. Therefore, navarasas are there. Through all these things, we can either develop feminine energy or masculine energy. If you are too feminine, then go to gym or go to akhada or do some male activities. So therefore, these are very easy to do. We need to have a time and dedicated in doing that. So we'll stop here for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. That was, it shows how broad-minded, how progressive our scriptures and our past history has been. We meet again next Tuesday. We will continue our conversations on women, especially relationship between women. We would be taking reference of Kunti Maharani and Gandhari. Till then, thank you very much. Good night and Hare Krishna.
Thank you.